Heroes are an inspiring group of people. Every one of them, from the larger-than-life comic book heroes you see on the big silver screen to the everyday heroes that let us live the privileged lives we do. Every hero has a story to tell. The doctor saving lives at your local hospital, the war veteran down the street who risked his lives for our freedom, the police officers and firefighters who risk their safety to ensure ours. Every hero is special and every story worth telling, but there is one class of heroes that I think is often ignored. The entrepreneur, the creator, the producer, the ones who look at the problems in this world and think to themselves, you know what? I can fix that. I can help people, and I can make a difference. Then they go out and do exactly that by creating a new product or introducing a new service. Some go on to change the world, others make a world of difference to their customers. Welcome to The Hero Show. Join us as we pull back the masks of the world's finest heropreneurs and learn the secrets to their powers, their success, and their influence, so you can use those secrets to attract more sales, make more money, and experience more freedom in your business. I'm your host, Richard Matthews, and we are on in 3, 2, 1. Hello, and welcome back to The Hero Show. My name's Richard Matthews. I am on the line with Laura Briggs. Laura, are you there?
Yes, I am.
Awesome. And actually, I think your maiden name actually still shows up on this. So Laura Pennington as well, for people who know you as Laura Pennington. So people aren't too confused on who you are. Let me introduce you real quick. You are, or were, a middle school teacher back in the day, and stopped doing that and got into freelance writing, and broke the 6-figure mark with your own business in 18 months, which is crazy cool. And now what you do is you help people like myself and other freelancers to build a lifestyle business. Is that about right?
Yeah, that accurately describes kind of the brief synopsis of my journey. Yes.
Awesome. So why don't you take a couple of minutes, Laura, and tell us what you're known for now, right? So what is it that people come to Laura for help? Why do they seek you out?
A lot of the people that I help right now have very similar situations, and that they've been freelancing for a while and they're stuck on how to scale and grow without approaching burnout. So a lot of them have built their business to the point where it's financially successful, but with the wrong clients, and they don't know how to do things like negotiate contracts, enforce boundaries with clients that might be sort of encroaching over the edge, and to really communicate effectively about what it is that they do to kind of make their marketing as simple as possible and then live the business that they want to live. I have some people who want to work 40 hours a week and some who can only work 10. So we really design strategies based for where it is they want to take their business.
That's awesome. Yeah, you'll probably enjoy this. That I travel full time in an RV with my family. We've been traveling for 2 years, and I put the number of hours I put into my business is really up to me. But it's the all those things that you were just talking about, figuring out how to manage my time and how to hire people and how to put the contracts in place and how to actually have the business that I want, and not the business that I accidentally built.
I'm so jealous too, because I've wanted to do something like the RV thing for a while. For the last 14 years, my husband's been in the military. So where we lived was never up to us, but we definitely have a goal of someday doing that. So I always love meeting people who do it, because it's like, it's possible.
Here, want me to break the illusion for you real quick?
Yeah,
This is actually
sure.
my RV, right? Like there's the closet and the washer and dryer over there, and the air conditioner hanging, right? So there we go.
But no
Break
one
the
would
illusion.
ever know. So
No one would ever know, except I show people.
yeah.
But yeah, it's there. Now I'm crooked. I went in there we go. Now we're straight up and down again on the camera. um, so but yeah, so what you're talking about is such a needed thing, right? And I've talked to a number of people over the course of my career who, and it's something that I've mentioned a number of times on the show too, is like you have to be careful of the monster you're building, right? And because you'll end up building a business you don't want.
Yes.
And it's what's interesting is it's not necessarily that it's not the type of business that someone else might want, right? So there's a lot of people, like I've been told in my life that oh, you have a lifestyle business. That's not a real business. A real business is like Apple. They have retail stores and, thousands of employees. And I'm like, no, that's just not the type of business I want. Right. And I think a lot of people like myself, and we get stuck into learning from people and whatever business model they're teaching and whatever the lifestyle requirements are of running that business, we just sort of default into whatever we learned. instead of actually crafting a business that fits exactly the lifestyle that we want, which I think is really fascinating.
Yeah. And I think a big part of the reason that a lot of us are in business is to get away from all of those things that were associated with traditional jobs. So you don't want to recreate a job where you're your own worst boss. And I think you're completely right, because it looks different for everyone, you know? And so sometimes it's about making a conscious decision. I was just reading a really good book called Company of One. And it's about this idea that by being purposefully small is actually the next big thing in business, because sometimes you scale your business to a point and you're like, oh, I don't like the way that it's operating at this model. I don't like how many expenses this requires, or it's that all hustle mentality of I have to work 80 hours to keep it sustained at this level. And that isn't really what you really wanted. So I think it's about being mindful of like, why did you start this and what do you want from it?
Yeah. And I realized that in my business too. Like I thought I had an income goal that I wanted. And on the way to that income goal, I realized that I had more than I needed.
Yes. Yes. I've had that happen. Yes.
So like I didn't even hit that income goal. And I was like, I don't know why I'm striving for that. That's not actually what I want. And so, it changes as you go.
Yeah, it's totally weird, because I think for a long time when you get started in business, you do focus on the financial goals, and that's good because it keeps you motivated and there's a clear number to work towards. But I've done the exact same thing where I'm like, oh, it's totally possible for me to like bring in a certain amount this year. And so I start doing that and I'm like, I'm tired, I'm burned out, I don't love the work that I'm doing. And it's like, why did I just say that I wanted that? Because like I kind of don't want that. So it's always okay to scale it back too.
Yeah. Yeah, and what I actually ended up finding was when I changed the focus from the income goal to the clients that I was serving, I actually surpassed that income goal.
Exactly.
Um,
Exactly.
yeah, right. So I was striving for it, realized I didn't need it, changed my focus, and then hit it. So, that's the way
Awesome.
that goes.
Yeah.
So I want to talk a little bit about your origin story, right? So every hero has one, and this is where you started to realize that you were different, that maybe you had superpowers, and that maybe you could use them to help other people, where you started to develop and discover the value you could bring to this world. How did that story sort of play out for you?
I have always been an avid reader and a lover of words. So even when I was in school as a child, I knew that I was always different. All I wanted to do was get through my assignment so I could read my books or go write my own story. So that calling of being a writer was something that was always sort of reaching out to me. I never thought I could make a living at it, right? Though, like, there's so much of this idea of the starving artist, and writers don't get paid well and they struggle with their art their whole life. And if they're lucky, maybe they get recognition at the end or something. And so I had all those beliefs in my mind. But when I was in college, I had one professor. I didn't study English, communication, journalism, nothing like that. But I had an English professor in an extra class, and he really liked my writing, and he just gave me positive comments about it. And I thought, maybe someday I can be a writer. And so several years later, when I was burning out as an inner city middle school teacher, I reflected back on every skill I thought I ever might have so I could transition into a new career. And I was like, well, I've heard a few times that I'm a decent writer, so maybe I should try to make a go with that. And serving my first couple of clients and them being happy with the results was really when I started to think that there was kind of something here that I could work with.
Awesome. So what type of writing were you doing at that point? Like what type of client writing were you like ghost writing for books, or were you doing like blog writing, or what was the writing type? Copywriting?
Mostly blogs and articles, but when I started, I did a little bit of everything. I definitely did books, I did white papers, I did things that were more technical. And I encourage people who are new to it to do that, because you don't know what you don't know. So until you do it, you might think, oh, like I'm going to love writing books. And I actually found I didn't love writing books for other people. So I changed to focus primarily on blogging.
Awesome. Yeah. So it's interesting because we have a similar story, right? My agency does a lot of writing as well. But we're on like what I ended up in the space I'm in is I help experts write their course material and their sales material. And so like a lot of people who are really, really good at a thing are not necessarily good at teaching that thing. So I'll help them take that expertise and translate it into written and audiovisual material, like course material, so they can actually be a great teacher and their students can get great results from it. So like it's still a type of writing. And so we spent a lot of time doing that. And I had the same thing when I was in like the seventh grade. I had my history, I say professor, but I guess they were teachers in the seventh grade. But my history teacher, I don't remember what we were writing about. It was, I think it was like Indians or something like that, because we were doing California history. And I turned in my first like long form essay, because we had to write like a 10-page essay or something like that. And, he handed everyone else's back, and he didn't hand mine back. And he told me to see him after class. And I had one of those like heart sinking moments where like, oh God, it must have been so bad that he can't even tell me about it. And he after class, I go up to him after class, and he's like, the reason I didn't give you your paper back is I didn't want you to cry in class. And I was like, oh no, it's so bad. And he's like, you don't write at a seventh grade level. He's like, you write at like a 12 or 16, you basically at the seventh grade, you're writing at a college level. And he's like, so I graded your paper as a college student and I tore it apart for you because basically I think you could improve a lot. And so anyways, he asked me if I could come and stay after school for the next, 6 or 7 weeks and actually tutor me in writing. So that was sort of like how I got my start too, is I had a professor who pushed me and said, hey, you can actually do something with this. And, some 20 something years later, I get paid professionally as a writer.
Isn't that crazy? Like I recently emailed the professor who made that comment to me, and I was like, I don't even know if you know this, but I mentioned it in my TEDx talk. So I feel like I got to thank you personally for like that comment. And he was like, I don't even remember it. He's like, no offense, but like, he's like, I remember you as a student, but he's like, every so often, like students come along and they have good writing. And I always want to encourage students who have good writing. So to me, it was just like, it was actually awesome that I was like, you might've inspired like multiple other people, and they just haven't told you that they're like in a writing or writing related field. So it really goes to show the power of one good mentor or person who can inspire you.
Yeah. My 10th grade professor was that way too. And I went back to his class, maybe 5 or 6 years ago, and just to say hi and let him know like what I was doing. And he had me speak to his class, that day, his English class, and I talked to him for about 10 minutes beforehand, and I was like, it's like this guy, like everything he taught me in this class, and I was like, is literally led to 6 figures year after year after year after year. And I was like, so pay attention, that kind of thing.
What a great motivator for those students.
yeah, so it was super fun. But yeah, that's sort of it's interesting, we have similar origin story getting into writing, and it started really young. But yeah, I was also my obsession wasn't writing though. My obsession was trying to figure out how to do business. Like I started my first business at 13, and I was selling candy that I bought wholesale, like retail on campus, like showing my jacket, here are my wares, and got shut down by the powers that be, saying I had to have a food license to sell on campus. But I made like $1,300 first. So anyways, that was me. I was obsessed with the business stuff from a young age, and it just ended up that the business that I ended up in is writing and communicating. So yeah. So the next part of the superhero stuff is your superpowers, right? And it's what you do or build or offer this world that helps solves problems for people. The thing that you use to like slay the world's villains, so to speak. What would you say your superpower is in your current business?
Oh, well, there's probably two that I have. I think one is being really good with boundaries. I think just especially in the professional sense, like I rock it with boundaries. I will shut somebody who's like a toxic client or edging into like red flag territory down like that. And I help a lot of the freelancers that I coach with that too. Like, here's exactly what you're going to say. Here's why we're going to get it in writing and all those kinds of things. But I think I also have a gift. I was just talking to someone, I hired another writer to write my about page on my website. I think my gift is I can talk to a client on the phone or get a sense for their brand, and I can produce materials in their brand like tone, style, and voice. Writing for myself, I can't do that. Like for whatever reason, there's like a mental block there of like, well, how do I describe myself? How do I create a bio? But I think being able to adapt into other people's conversational style or the way that they want to present themselves online, and doing that in so many different industries is really a strength of mine.
I have the same problem, by the way. And I know a number of copywriters that do. Like, you can write for someone else, but when it comes to
Yeah.
writing for yourself, you're just like, you can't do it. I was actually just brought on to one of the top copywriters in the world. Brought me on to help him write the copy for his products. He's like, I can write copy. He's produced $1 billion plus in sales with his copy, and can't write the copy for his own products. So you're not alone in
Yes.
in that thing.
Yeah. I think it's a
Uh,
problem with writers, especially. Yeah.
Yeah. So I'm curious, you because the boundaries is not something that I have seen or heard talked about much.
Mm.
And I want to dive into that a little bit. Why is that a problem for people? And why is it such an effective, like, we talked in the terms of villains, right? Boundaries are
Mhm.
keeping the villains away, right? So how does that sort of play out for your customers, and what does it help them do?
Yeah, so it happens a lot to freelancers for a couple of reasons. Like working with digital freelancers is pretty new for a lot of companies. A lot of like some companies have been doing it for like 10 years and they're like, yep, we have an established system. This is how we interact with freelancers. But a lot of companies are just now realizing the power of outsourcing to someone outside the office on a contract basis. So sometimes clients will try to treat a freelancer as if they are another employee, which is illegal in the United
Mhm.
States and also something that all of our freelancers hate. We don't like being treated like I'm available 24/7 or you can talk to me however you want and I should just be so grateful for the opportunity sort of thing. So I think it comes up a lot because of that, and also because freelancers often are freelancing in the process of leaving or have already left a day job. So they have an employee mentality rather than a CEO entrepreneur mentality. And the CEO entrepreneur mentality, think of any business owner, they probably have great boundaries in place to protect their time, to protect their intellectual property, to protect the way that they interact with their team. And we often forget that, like, even as a freelancer, as a copywriter, as a graphic designer, whatever you do in the freelance world or whatever service you provide, you are a business owner, you are a CEO. And if you don't act like one, a lot of times those boundaries can kind of be crushed. So I think those two things happening at the same time mean that there needs to be a lot more education about here's how you effectively interact with a freelancer, because we can do great work and we'll bring excellent expertise to the table, but it has to be like, a lot of us are freedom-based people. We want to be traveling in the RV, or we want to be able to pick up and take a 3-week vacation. So how do you interact with that person differently than perhaps an employee?
Yeah. I know, like, one of the things that I do to protect my time, because I've noticed that same problem, right? If you don't set up the relationship generally from the beginning with like the expectations of how to be communicated with, then you get communicated in all sorts of weird ways.
Mm,
So, and at weird times and stuff like that. And so like one of the things that I do is I have a calendar, like one of those calendaring softwares. Actually, you probably interacted with it when we set up this interview. And
mhm.
I have another link that I send for my clients. And every time they'll text me or email me like, can we hop on the phone? Do you have 10 minutes now? Or can you, like, all the things that clients will ask you. And my answer is always,
Mm,
yes, here's my calendar. Right.
mhm.
And my calendar is like got rules in it that like someone can't book an appointment without like 4 hours advance notice kind of thing. So like they can't book on my calendar like now. Right.
Yeah.
So I train them that they're like, over the course of time, every time they ask me to get on the phone, here's my calendar link. And there's never an available time within 4 hours of when they want to talk to me. So they have to plan a little bit if they're going to get on the phone with me. So like that's just one little strategy, but I do the same kind of thing. It's like now I can't just pick up the phone anytime you call. And
Yeah.
like, I'll even, I even have, I have one client who really loves to call me, and I generally won't, like, it's not because I don't like him. I actually love him. We got a great relationship and everything, but he'll call me and I'll hit the little auto reply with my link. Be like, I'm busy. Here's my link. Even if I could answer the phone,
Yeah,
right? Because
exactly.
yeah, because I can't have my clients assume that that I'm not currently doing other things. And so
Yes.
it's really it's an important aspect of running a freelance business, is just realizing how to
Mm.
protect and guard your time, so you can actually deliver.
Yeah. And I think that's like when you can explain it to clients too. There was a period where I was working on a number of really like projects that I consider heavy lifting. They required a lot of my brain power and focus. And I would put an autoresponder on my email that would be turned on during those specific times. And it would say, I'm working on a client's project right now. I'll be checking my email again at blah, blah, blah time, or this is just to let you know I've received your message. And what clients got from that was not only I'm not responding to your email anytime soon, but think carefully if you really needed to send me this email in the first place, and know that when I'm working on your project, I am just as focused and don't allow other people to invade my time as well. So those kinds of little tricks and things really help, because as a freelancer or someone owning a service-based business, you probably have multiple clients. And so it can't be the expectation that 10 or 15 people can all access you whenever and you'll drop whatever you're doing to be able to help them.
Yeah. And it's a difficult thing to learn to manage, especially as you start growing, right? And like one of the growing pains that I'm currently having is I expanded my client roster, and I brought on team members, right? And I have a couple of people on my team now, and I've noticed my bottleneck still is my customer communication. And I haven't yet figured out how to make that transition from like customer communication always comes directly to me, and how I can like move it through someone else.
Yeah.
So I'm like working through that at this point. But yeah, so it's like, you as a freelancer, you're running a business, right? And now I've actually got I got a couple of VAs on staff. So like I have a lot more resources available to me than my own time that I did before. So just figuring out how to effectively manage those and use those is, it's part of what I'm growing and doing right now.
Yeah. And I think if you view it as an experiment and kind of ask your team to be on board with that too, like, hey, we're going to try this specific thing. We're not committed to it, but let me know what you think about it as we do it. For a while, my team had like a Trello board where we literally would just dump everything. And then it was like, this is really ineffective. Like we need to have like only the stuff we're working on right now on the Trello board, and then everything else off over to the side. And so it was like, okay, we're going to try this. We're going to try a weekly sprint and just test it out and see what works for you. So not feeling like you're a failure if one thing doesn't work is a great way to approach it.
Yeah. Yeah. Like experimenting on yourself and experimenting. I tell my clients ahead of time that I'm going to experiment on them.
Yeah.
Or this is like, hey, with services, sometimes we're like, hey, this is something new that we want to see for your marketing stuff. And you can approach it the same thing with your business. Is, you can experiment with things here and experiment with things there and see how they work. And it's interesting how much progress you can make, because that is a type of innovation, right?
Mm-hmm.
And that type of innovation is what allows you to make leaps in your business.
Yeah. Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
And sometimes it's little things that you don't realize could have a big impact. When Voxer came around, I can type, but I type all day for clients. So anything that relieves me typing meant I put all of my team members, like, you can only communicate with me through Voxer and leave documents and stuff on Trello. And that makes it so much faster for me to just hit that button, record a quick message, give them some feedback, and move on. And it was like, when you test that stuff out and you're not feeling fully committed to the result, but you see changes, it's really powerful to be like, wow, like, I'm glad I tried that. I never would have known if that would work or not.
Yeah. I tried Voxer and I can't handle it, because I don't like for whatever, I'm better at reading the things. So we ended
Yeah.
up with Slack, right? So they'll message
Yeah.
me on Slack, and it's because I can read it faster. There was like I feel like I have to like really commit to listening to a voice message.
Yeah. Yeah.
And so anyways, it didn't work for me as well. But like I have one of my clients who uses Voxer all day long, and if someone communicates with him without Voxer, he's like, it doesn't exist.
Exactly. Exactly. So see, it's so different for different people too. And I think it's important as a business owner to know what works for you. And when you are bringing people onto your team, say, hey, this is the most effective way to communicate with me. Does that work with you or not? Because it can make it a lot easier when you've got everyone on the same page.
Yeah. And like one of the things that I've done with my team too is I have one of our Slack channels is we have like a daily check-in. It's like, hey, just say hi when you're in working on something and say bye when you're leaving, right? Because we're a digital team. Come in and actually, be a part of the water cooler conversation and just say hi and bye and that kind of stuff. And when I bring people on, even for project-based stuff where they're only in for a little while, I always bring them in and introduce them to everyone and say hi and whatnot. And it's been interesting how like that kind of stuff has impacted just the people that are a part of the company, right? It's part of my company, which is small, right? There's only, myself and a VA and a part-time VA and occasionally a developer, occasionally a designer, and starting to become friends, right, with these people and, from all over the world. And I don't know, it's an interesting way that, when I was working by myself, you didn't have any of that. So, it's like moving into that CEO role and realizing that even though you're running a freelance business, it doesn't have to be lonely or by yourself, that kind of thing.
Yeah, absolutely. I totally agree.
So the flip side of a hero's superpowers is the fatal flaws, right? So Superman has his kryptonite, Batman's not actually super, right? What would you say is one of the fatal flaws that you've had to deal with in your business career? And more importantly, what have you done or put in place to help solve that for other people who might suffer from something similar?
Well, if left to my own devices, would be a workaholic. And that is a habit that I am
Amen.
consistently policing myself over and trying to get better about recognizing when it has crept back in my life. Because sometimes you don't realize it and you're like, hey, I've been doing this for 3 months now and I'm like exhausted. So I think that that's a real problem with us creative entrepreneurs too, because your business brain never really shuts off. So you're always thinking about it. And we're usually always within reach of our phone or our computer. So it's so easy to be like, oh yeah, let me fire off this email really quick. And oh yeah, I need to check in with so-and-so. And
Or
it's
take
like,
this note or
yeah, it's like, it's really constant. So I've tried a lot of things. One of the most effective for me has been occasionally getting out of the house because I just want to get my work done. So I don't spend as long doing it. Sometimes I'll take my laptop without the charging cord. So it's like, I have until that battery dies to get done what I need to do.
and the older
Also
your
during
computer gets, the less that time is.
oh yeah, it's bad now. It's like an hour and a half now. So I'm like, I gotta move. But I've done, like in the summer, I often don't work Fridays at all. I try to not do any client work after about 1 p.m. in the afternoon. So that kind of keeps me on a clock. Sometimes I don't even need to go that long, but it helps me remember, like, have I taken on too many projects from clients? Because if I can't do it in the time I've set aside for my client stuff, then I can't take on this particular project. So that is what I would call an ongoing struggle. And I know a lot of other freelancers who are like that too.
You struggle with the same
We see
thing.
the potential. Yeah, we see the potential of growing. Plus we're so personally connected to it. Like your business is part of your identity and a huge part of your brand. So you feel like you want to keep nursing it along, but it can kind of come at the cost of your physical or your mental health. So it's important to figure out, I have had to hack my own brain and be like, okay, Laura, if you can't do client work after 1 p.m., what does that mean? What client do you need to let go? Whose rates needs to be raised? Like, how am I going to be more organized and ask my VA to help, knowing all of that?
Yeah. So, a couple of thoughts on that. First one, do you have any children?
I do not.
So,
I
so
don't,
one of
I am
my
in awe of the people who do. Like, I don't know how y'all do it.
one of one of my I have four of them. Um, one of my brain hacks for the same problem is that I have children that are growing up really quickly,
Yeah.
and if I allow myself to be a workaholic, I miss
Yes.
things. And one of
Yes.
the reasons why I have my freelancing company and why I work from home and while I travel is because I want to do things and be there with them.
Yeah.
So it's like built-in motivation for me to, finish my stuff on time and have built-in parts of my schedule that are, I call it giving yourself permission to play,
Yes.
right?
Yes.
And permission to play is, because it's an important part of being a successful creative or a successful freelancer or a successful CEO is you have to be able to innovate, and you have to be able to create, and you have to be able to think, and you have to be able to do those things clearly. And I had a guy on the show recently. He's a neuroscientist, and he talks about like when you're like physically in one space doing something, you'll actually wear out the nerves the same way you would,
Yeah.
like, if you're doing the plank position and gymnastics for 20 minutes and you stand up, you could still walk around, but if you try to get back in the plank position, you've worn out all those muscles, right?
Hmm.
And if you are like physically working, right? People ask me, what do you do? And I'm like, well, I sit in a chair and I click buttons and I move my mouse around and I talk on the phone, right? Like that's what I like physically. The things that I do are those things. And people laugh, but it's reality. You ask my wife what she does, and she's like, I wipe things, right? I get up in the morning and I start wiping things, and I wipe things all day until I go to sleep. Right. That's what happens when you have 4 children, right? And
Yeah.
so just having times in your schedule where you pull away and you're literally doing something different, right? Playing with your kids or going outside, or I don't know, whatever it is, something that's not work
Hmm.
makes your work better.
Yeah. Yeah. And I think I've started to notice too, when I start to feel aggravated, frustrated, or when something really small annoys me, that is my clue to close the laptop lid and leave the house. Even if it is for 10 or 15 minutes, it's taking the dog on a walk. I need to physically leave the house to kind of get a break from everything and decompress rather than like sticking it out and trying to push through. I also completely agree with you about the idea of like building in your playtime. Sometimes it's really awesome to have stuff on your calendar that has no requirements. It's just like your creative time, it's your fun time, it's your time with your
Yeah.
family. And it's like there's no specific structure to it that you have to do. But I think that leaves some freedom in there as well.
Yeah. And so the other thing that I've noticed has, like, for me, and I'm curious how this has been going for you, is like as I've brought on team members, I realized that my more valuable work a lot of times is not actually the delivery of services. It is the building of processes so other people can do the delivery of services. Because now I can put in an hour of work or 2 hours of work and get 10 or 15 hours of work in return, because I've got staff, which has been like really, really fascinating aspect of like reducing my time load while still accomplishing the same workload.
Yeah, I am a huge fan of delegating. I delegate and outsource so many things. Now, I've made a decision in my freelance business. I don't outsource my writing work to subcontractors. I've done
Hmm.
that before multiple times and really did not like it. So, because of that, every other aspect of my business needs to be managed in some way by someone on my team. And I don't care if it's something that would only take me 10 minutes, just the mental load of me not having to think about it. It's like, oh, if I'm making a PowerPoint, I'm not the one creating that and finding all the images and making the animations work and doing all those kinds of things behind the scenes. And it is a huge relief to have people who can support you. Like I've worked with my VA who's been with me the longest, has been with me for 5 years. So he knows my business like in and out. I can leave him like a 30-second message and he'll just take whatever and run with it. And my graphic designer knows my brand and my colors, and she knows the way that I speak. So it's like very minimal instruction and very little management needed on my part for them to do stuff that really helps me. I think it's hard for so many business owners to let go of the control, right? Because we get so used to doing it ourselves, but it can be really
Yeah.
liberating.
Yeah. And what's interesting is like I have found that like I had the hardest time hiring other people because I was like I'm really fast and I'm really good.
Mm-hmm.
And being fast and good is a it's like, I don't know what the word I'm looking for is. It's a double-edged sword,
Yeah, it
right?
is.
Where I was constantly asking myself the question like, should I hire this out or should I do it myself? And the answer to that question is almost always I should do it myself.
Yeah.
And when I hired someone and actually just committed to bringing them on staff, the question then changed to like, I have this person, how can I best use their time,
Mm-hmm.
right? And it's a different question that sort of, it changed the trajectory of my business, because now I was like, I forced myself to start pulling myself out of things. And then the realization that I had, which is, it's humbling, is that you bring other people in and they do it better than you, or faster than you, or
Yeah.
or to a better degree than you do. And you're like, well, there you go. There's my humble pill for the day. And but that's but it's a good thing, right? Because now I can deliver higher quality, faster, better results for my clients, when I bring better people to the table.
Yeah. And I think it's always that question of, is this the best use of my time? Would a CEO be doing this particular thing? Even if it is something that's entrenched in you, like, well, I could do this really fast, because I'm the same way. It's like, I could knock this out so fast, but it's like, do I want to expend my mental energy on that? Or should I stay focused on what I do best, which is writing and talking to clients? Like, everything that is not writing and talking to clients is not the best use of my time. So
Yeah.
let's figure out how I can bring on somebody to do
It's
those other things.
it's that whole idea that you should do only what only you can do,
Mm-hmm.
right?
Yes.
And so, like, same kind of thing. I'm really good at PowerPoint, and Keynote and those kind of things, and I can animate the socks off of things in that, just because I've learned how to do it. And I could probably do it in half the time that my VA could do it, right? But at the same time, my VA can do it, and there's things that
Yes.
I can do that he can't do, right?
Yeah.
That nobody else on my team can do. And those are the things I should be focusing on, because those are the things that grow my business. All right. And that's like, the client meetings and the expert brand building stuff that we do, is it's stuff that only I can do. And it's that transition that you talked about from being, a lot of us came out of the employee world, and now we're a freelancer, and you can approach that freelance like thing as business as a job, or you can approach it as a CEO. And like, learning
Mm-hmm.
how to approach it as a CEO is like the skill that we all need to learn.
Yeah. And I think even if you could do the task or group of tasks in the same amount of time or less time, or you have more proficiency or the same level of proficiency, it helps you accomplish so much more. I often have people ask me, because I am a solopreneur and I have a very bootstrap team behind me, but people are like, how do you do all of that? How are you keeping track of those 5 major things that are kind of like different businesses interacting together? And it's like, well, one of those businesses is completely run by my VA, right? And like, so much of it makes it seem like I'm everywhere. I'm not really everywhere. I'm just one person, but my VA who's producing
Makes you
my
seem like a
podcast
superhero.
episodes, yeah, like, we're on YouTube and we're on podcasts and I'm doing speaking engagements and coaching people. So it seems like I am that superhero. And it's like, no, I'm very much human and have my flaws too. But my team is making my brand that much bigger and in that many more places, because I've said, you do this. That's your zone of genius. I'm going to stay in my lane and do my thing.
Yeah, that's interesting. On the this podcast is fairly new, right? I think might be right around episode 20 or something like that. And we publish it to Facebook and YouTube and like 15 different podcast networks, and we transcribe it and get it on our blog, and we create derivative content that gets promoted to all the micro social networks and all over the place. And it's like a ginormous amount of content gets created, which like makes me feel like, it makes me look like I'm everywhere. Like, and I'm 20 episodes in, and I've got so many people booked on my podcast that I'm booked out through December. And
It's
what's crazy
crazy.
is I didn't do any of it. My VA did it
Right.
all. I just show up and do the
Exactly.
interviews.
Yeah,
So
it's
so
amazing.
like, it makes you seem and feel bigger than you are, right? And that's the whole idea of being a CEO, right? You're building something that's bigger than yourself. So that's
Yeah.
really cool.
Yeah.
So I'm gonna move forward a little bit. Your common enemy, right? So a common enemy is superheroes have something they're fighting against, right? So think about it like this: if you could, when you bring on a new client, go into their life or their brain or their situation and remove something that would immediately move, give them like leaps and bounds, move them forward, what would
Mhm.
that thing be?
probably this idea that it's going to be much harder than it is. A lot of the reasons why clients get hesitant about hiring freelancers is because they think it's going to be difficult or that they're going to get burned. And sometimes they have been burned in the past. So that's a common objection that I have to overcome in phone calls is, oh, I hired somebody else and they never delivered the work, or they delivered it and it was really poor quality. And those nerves can keep people from moving forward with a project that they really want to have completed. So if I could kind of eliminate that, because I have that conversation over and over and over again. And of course, I've developed my business processes to showcase why I'm different, but it would be great if more people felt comfortable about the prospect of hiring freelancers.
So there's actually, there's like two sides to that, right? So there's the side that you want to actually remove that because that's a conversation you have to have regularly. But then part of your business is you help freelancers, right? So if you start, depending on how big your impact gets, right, with as freelancers start to become a better part of our economy and our culture, you'll have more and more of the positive past results with freelancers instead of negative past results with freelancers, because they're starting to approach their businesses like CEOs and actually delivering good product. So
Yeah,
you're like self-fulfilling your own wish.
And some people are like, well, why are you helping people who could essentially be your competition? And it's like, well, I don't see them as my competition because we all have different like styles and ways that we approach things with clients. But the more that I can help someone be an effective freelancer, just like you said, the more people think that freelancers are a great investment in their business. So it's the rising tide lifts all ships. If that word gets out there, like I had a good experience, then it's like, I will also have a good experience from that because clients are now more open to working with freelancers and are approaching it from a positive perspective.
Yeah. And it's so true too, because one of the conversations I have frequently is it basically ends like this: that person's not your customer, right? So I talk to clients, and clients are like, well, I don't, everyone's worried about competition. And, I help people build their expert brand, right? And I've got like 5 or 6 people in the real estate space that teach real estate coaching, 2 or 3 of them that teach specifically commercial real estate investing. And they're always talking about, they're always worried about, well, what about the competition? What about the saturation of the marketplace? What about Grant Cardone? He teaches commercial real estate. And I was like, the reality is like people are going to connect with you as an individual, right?
Yeah.
And I, for instance, love Grant Cardone for his teaching and what he does and what he's helped people with and his big brand and all that stuff. But like personally, his teaching style and his talking style is grating to me. Like I don't connect with him, and I couldn't sit down and learn from him because I would, I'd like, want to claw my eyeballs out. Like he gives me, say, I don't know what it is. It's just energy. His energy doesn't jive with me. But another client of mine, the way that he teaches and the way that he talks and stuff like that, it does work for me, even though they're talking about the same type of things. And the reality is it's like that in every business. Is you're going to have the person, the freelancer that you connect with. So honestly, they're not my competition. They're, they're going to have their customers. I'm going to have mine. And none of us can serve everyone.
No, and you don't want to anyways. Like I really believe that not everyone is my ideal client. And I like to get on the phone with people who I've even had people that have like their credit cards out, they're ready to buy a course of mine or they're ready to invest in coaching. And it's like, no, you have to do the free 30-minute call first. Like I have to make sure we're going to work and trust that I'm going to tell you if this is not a good fit, or if I don't think this is the right investment in your business at this point in time, I'll tell you. And a lot of people are caught off guard by that. But it's like, having been there and invested in a lot of stuff myself, I always want to find the person who's right for me at that particular point. And if a prospective coaching client or student is asking me and I really feel that it's a no, I'm happy to recommend them to someone else and say, so-and-so style is probably a little bit more your jam. If you think I talk too fast already, like we're going to struggle the whole time. So I want you to hear what I sound like, the way that I talk, the way that I approach your business, so that we both can feel comfortable about it. Because it's true. It's not your competition. Everyone has a different style.
Yeah. And, I tell my clients ahead of time that, I talk fast, I move fast, I communicate well, and I tell jokes and that kind of stuff. And if that's not down, like if we're not on the same page, then we're going to have a hard time working together. So I'll point them other direction. Like I just had a client the other day ask me, they're like, "Can you do all this stuff on YouTube?" And I was like, "I could, but honestly, like that's a place that I'm experimenting with. It's not a place that like if you want someone who's going to blow you up, that's not me, right? So
Yeah.
here's my recommendations on that. And you have to just know where, you know, the other, I've seen freelancers say that no, I have to take that business because then it's going to go to a competition. And from my perspective, it's like, hey, if I can take this client and bring that client to someone else, I've had multiple benefits to multiple people, right? I benefit the other freelancer, helping them get new clients. I benefited my client by creating a great relationship. And that just comes back in later
It
on,
does.
right?
And sometimes people, you'll tell somebody no because they're not a fit for you, but in their future, they will find someone who is a fit for you and say, hey, I remember I talked to Laura like 3 years ago. You might want to reach out and see if she's still doing freelance writing or coaching, but I think your style and her style might really work. So I have actually gotten referrals from people that either turned me down or I turned them down. And I'm like, who is this person? And I go back and search through my email and I'm like, oh yeah, we had a conversation and it didn't go anywhere from there. So you never know. I think you also build your own authenticity from being upfront and honest and not just saying, oh, I can help everyone with everything and I'm great at every single thing. No, it's much better to be like, let me make a recommendation for you, and that helps build that loyalty with whoever you were just talking to because you're being very genuine.
Yeah. And then like when you make those kind of recommendations, the people you're making recommendations to a lot of times end up being reciprocal and they send business back your direction when they find good fits for you. So anyways, I love that type of thing. And it's absolutely right. Right. So if we can make all of the freelance experiences that businesses have better, it's going to make all of our lives, as freelancers better. So
Yes.
anyways, I love what you're doing. So other side of the common enemy is your driving force, your mission, right? So just like Spider-Man fights to save New York or Batman fights to save Gotham or Google fights to categorize all the world's information, what is your mission? I want to know what it is.
Oh, I am just driven to help people find freedom and flexibility. There's a lot in traditional employment that, like, this whole idea of 9 to 5 is a holdover from the Industrial Revolution. And there's no real strong proof that we need to work exactly 40 hours a week between the hours of 9 to 5 to be effective and productive. So I think more people than ever are looking for that freedom-based lifestyle with flexibility because they have families, because they have other things that they want to pursue. And so I know that's my personal driving force. And 9 times out of 10 with someone I'm coaching, that's their goal as well. They want a lifestyle where they decide what it looks like and how often they're in or out of the office.
Yeah. You and I are cut from the same cloth. My business name behind the scenes is Five Freedoms. And
Oh, awesome.
I talk about the five main freedoms that are required to have a free lifestyle. Right, we have our basics are covered by living in the United States. Right, we
Yeah.
have political freedom, which is basically the ability to do what you want to do without fear of jail time. Right,
Yes.
and spiritual freedom, which is the the freedom that comes from you're being in touch with your creator, that kind of stuff. Those are like foundational freedoms. And then you have financial freedom, time freedom, and location freedom.
Mm.
And most people focus on financial freedom and think that once they hit a certain, like we talked about earlier, income goal, that they'll have reached freedom.
Yeah.
And without realizing that if you're not careful about what you build, you'll sacrifice your time freedom and your location freedom in order to get that financial freedom.
Yes.
And so I think more people should start focusing on like, how do I build a business that you're talking about, a lifestyle business that gives me my
Mhm.
time and gives me my location freedom, and still allows me to hit the income goals that I want to hit, right? Because
Yeah.
I personally, it's like when you realize that your ability to choose what you want to do at any given time is really the freedom, right? That's
Yes.
the freedom aspect, right? And you're not restricted by the amount of money in your bank account or the how far you can get from the location you're tied to or how much time you have to spend at your job, right? When you have the freedom of choice in all those areas, you end up with a very free lifestyle.
Yeah. And it's also about like, what new are you adding into your world that you really want to go after because you have that time, location, and financial freedom? Like for me, I was like, I don't need to have the $1 million freelance business, because as long as I'm making enough to support my other goals, like last year I wanted to get a literary agent and I wanted to do a TEDx talk. And I was like, so how can I rearrange my business to allow for the extra time that I'm going to put towards these two efforts? And to me, that was freedom, because I was like, wow, this is really cool. Like, no one's telling me I can't do this. I don't have to like cram it into nights and weekends. Like, it kind of fluidly became a part of my business and life. And I just really love that.
Yeah, and you have that freedom to choose the things that are important to you at any given time. And what's cool about that, when you have those freedoms to choose, you realize that your destination, like the thing you're moving towards, changes, right?
Yes.
It doesn't stay the same all the time, right? And you might have like a bigger overarching goal, but like the path that you're taking is constantly moving and changing. Like, and maybe this year TEDx isn't on the list of things you want to do. Maybe it's something else, right?
Yeah.
But you have the freedom to do that. Like, one of the things I've been playing around with is just the last couple of weeks, as I've been learning to draw, right? So I've been taking a couple hours at night and just teaching myself how to draw, going through courses like that. But I have the freedom to do that, right? I have a
Yeah.
couple hours a night I can put towards that. I don't have to worry about my business or my job or other things, because I've got the time freedoms to put into, in this case, the only reason I'm learning to do it is because I'm flexing the learning something new muscle, right?
Yeah. Yeah, I love that.
Right. Yeah. So you have the freedom to do those kind of things. So the next thing up on the whole discussion of being a hero is the hero's tool belt, right? So maybe you have a big magical hammer like Thor, or a bulletproof vest like your neighborhood police officer, or maybe you just really love how Evernote helps you organize your thoughts, or how you can build slides in Keynote, right? What are some of the tools that you and your team use to accomplish the work that you do?
One of my absolute favorites is also so cheap. I feel like it's either $5 or $10 a month, but it's called Boomerang for Gmail. Literal lifesaver. You can schedule emails to go out later. You can schedule them to come back in your inbox, whether or not the person has responded. So when you're keeping track of things like follow-ups, or if a team member sends me something and I'm like, this isn't a priority, send it back to me in 2 days, it will re-deliver it to my inbox as if it's a new email. And that also works really well if you're working weird hours and you don't want people to know it. I often work very early in the morning because that's when I'm first alert, but I don't want my clients to get emails at 4 or 5 o'clock and think that that's like a normal thing. They can expect me to be ready, or feel like that's an interruption into their morning. So I'll write the emails then, but I'll schedule it to go out when business kind of starts in the East Coast and everything. So I love Boomerang. It's really helped my email inbox stay organized. For a long time, my inbox was just like the bane of my existence. I dreaded opening it. I'm like, here we go. I probably have 130 messages and I don't have time to answer all of these. And it was a real stressful point, but being able to just say, this isn't important, that can be done in 2 days, this gets forwarded to a team member, like it's really become kind of a powerful tool to use.
Awesome. And Boomerang, I had never thought of using it that way. I have Boomerang, but
Yeah.
I've only ever used it for like the automatically reminding me if someone hasn't followed up yet. So it's interesting to hear like the other ways that you're using Boomerang to like improve what you're doing with clients and stuff.
Yeah, I think that it's really like, I love sending out, like if I'm going to if I'm marketing my business, let's say I need to bring on a new client and I'm pitching over email, I'm going to send all those pitches at once. And then I'm also going to track them. If you use HubSpot, they will tell you when your emails have been opened. So you can also see who's interested in working with you. If they open something 17 times, they might be interested. So that can also give you a clue with follow-up. So between those two tools, that way, if I send a bunch of messages at 9 a.m., I can expect that maybe in the afternoon, I need to come back and respond to all of them. So when I batch them together like that, it makes it much easier for me to be able to read my email, respond, kind of only ask my brain to do one thing. And then I'll do like, I'll put all my team members' emails into one folder. So when it's time for me to go answer all of those, it's all in one place and I'm only thinking about those kinds of projects.
So, curious question. How important has batching been to growing your business?
Instrumental, like game changer. I mean, there's like only like a handful of things. And one of them was like hiring a VA, but batching as a writer, I wasted so many years trying to say, okay, here's client A's project. Let me sit down, do all the research, pick the title, find the resources and the links, create the focus keywords, write it, edit it, send it, no. Now I do everything in 3 stages. It's all research, all writing, all editing. So it's actually multiple clients, different projects, but I'm doing the same task, because switching lanes in my brain from writing to editing to researching, those are 3 very different processes. So it's much easier for me to sit down and say on a Friday, okay, I have to come up with 7 blog titles for clients next week. I'm going to do all 7 of them together, record it in a spreadsheet, pass it to my VA to find the resource links and keywords and images that go with it. And then I'll come back and do like separate batches of writing together and then editing. And it makes me feel so much less exhausted at the end of the day. So batching is key. I do it with a lot of things. I put all my communication and administrative stuff together. That has been really, really important for making me not feel so tired. Because I think we live in this multitasking society, but the truth is that just wears you out. You feel like you're spread all over the place and frazzled. And so it's much easier to say, like, I am working on answering client emails right now, and I'm going to set a timer for 30 minutes. And when I'm done, I'm not answering client emails until another window later today, but I'm going to move into a different project after that.
Yeah, so the reason I brought that up is because you mentioned you're using Boomerang to accomplish batching with your email. And I was curious if that flowed into some of the other areas. So it sounds like batching is a big tool you use in your business. I know it's something that I discovered as well. And like one of the things that I help my clients do, because we build the whole expert brand stuff, is like we'll help them build a podcast show, right? Like a weekly show like this one. And they're like, well, I don't know how I'm going to have time. Like, I don't have time to do a show every week. And I was like, you don't have to do a show every week. Just pick one day early in the month and record 4 or 5 episodes. If there's 4 or 5 weeks in the month, and you spend a couple hours, record them all. And then like you hand them off to my team and we'll do everything else. Right. So you can create a weekly show for our clients, and we have them batch it. And then my team all batches all their stuff anyways, but because of the way we built it, but we can take for them and create a weekly show, out of something that they can batch in a couple hours. Right. And then they end up having that whole, they're everywhere and they love it. Anyways, batching is just, it's something that I don't think a lot of people realize. Like they think in terms of like, I have to do the thing when the thing is needed to be done. Like, if that makes sense, instead of thinking in terms of batching and scheduling.
Yeah, and you have to get a little bit ahead. So it's a little bit of a challenge, but I first realized how powerful that could be when I would go on vacation and I had no choice but to batch, because I needed to get 2 or 3 weeks ahead on client work. And when you kind of think, okay, every month I'm going to need this certain many things that need to be created. I even batch, like when I create my content for my coaching business, we just keep a shared Google Doc, and I'll go in there and be like, these are the 4 YouTube videos. These are the 4 podcast titles. These are the 4 things that are going to go out to market my freelance writing business. And that instantly tells my team, go start creating the social graphics with that on there. And then I will sit down and record it all. If I do YouTube, I just change my shirt in between the recording, so it looks like I'm recording at different times. But it's like, why would I record one 5-minute video every week? I can just sit here for half an hour and like do all of them and upload them all and then have the team take care of it. So hopefully this inspires some people who are listening to think about the various ways that they can batch.
So one of the things that I told one of my clients who does YouTube videos, he did like 5 or 10 videos. And I was like, what, because I had him batch them all. And I was like, what you should do for me, it was like, just have 4 or 5 different shirts, change your shirt, change your shirt for them so you can batch them and they look like they're, and he was like, oh, that's a genius. So now he does that. He'll pick out 4 or 5 shirts and batch his videos and change his shirts. So it's funny that you do the same thing. But yeah, when you batch them, you can get them all done at one time, and then, and have stuff get created for you. It's I don't know. I think it changes the game a little bit, on getting stuff done, because you don't have to constantly think about, like, especially if you're doing like the content creation, right? I have to come up with something new every other day or something like that, or you can put it all together. Like I have a list, like I keep a little list in my notes on like video topics, and
Mhm.
I'll just sit down and record 4 or 5 videos on those. And then I send them out. Right. And if you're as geeky as I am, I actually have when you hit the stop button and it uploads, I have like Zapier triggers that notify my team members that a new video has been put in there, and like it kicks off a whole series of processes that it's like new videos, and make sure you transcribe the video, move it into such and such a folder, and it's got like the whole checklist on there. When that checklist is done, it's like, here's the next checklist, add this checklist to the process and move through through those things. But that's a level of geekery that not many people get to.
I love that. I'm going to have to start implementing that, because my system is not that streamlined yet, but I'm already thinking about like how helpful that could be, and save me another round of
So
emails. Yeah.
are you tired of trying to write webinars that don't consistently convert? How would you like to have a webinar that effortlessly created sales in your online business? You can. Introducing the Webinar Alchemy Workshop. Webinar Alchemy Workshop is an online masterclass that will help you write incredibly persuasive webinars for your online courses quickly and easily. Using what you learn in this class, you can build a webinar that educates your entire audience while still creating sales. For a limited time, you can purchase this masterclass for only $7, and you'll get the exact framework I've personally used to help my clients sell more than $1 million worth of online coaching and training just over the last year. Simply text the word alchemy, ALCHEMY, to 444999, and I'll send you all the details.
The music is by Purple Planet Music. Visit www.purple-planet.com.
So if you want the quick and dirty of the process is Google Drive is capable of being a trigger in Zapier, right? So you can trigger things to happen when a new file is added to a new folder in Google Drive.
Okay.
And so I'll use Zapier to watch a folder, right? So I'll have a folder for my videos. And so like I use ScreenFlow, I think, for recording videos. And I can upload straight to Google Drive, and I drop them into the new video folder for whatever. I have my shows, or my I have a different folder for different shows. So I'll just click the button, and they upload in the background when I'm done. And so Zapier will trigger, depending on which folder I dropped it into. It'll create a card, put it on the right Trello board, and it'll have the first checklist in there for all the things that need to happen with it. It'll assign it to the appropriate VA, drop a due date on it with some math based on the thing that's going on. And it will, the last part of the checklist is always, once you're finished with this checklist, move it to the next stage and add the next checklist, right, for the thing. So it goes through the process. And so I think through all of my processes that way is how can I have the least amount of interaction from me possible? Because I tell people I'm aggressively lazy. Like aggressively lazy. I'll spend 5 hours to build a robot so I never have to do a thing again, because I just know if I have to upload the video and then get the links for the video and then put it all together in an email or a Trello card or something like that, that it's just never going to happen, right? Because I'm too lazy for it. So I was like, I need to build a robot that does all the hard stuff for me.
That's amazing. I'm gonna have to steal that.
Yeah, so it pays to be aggressively lazy.
Yeah.
Okay, so the next almost last question here is your own personal heroes, right? So Frodo had Gandalf, Luke had Obi-Wan, Robert Kiyosaki is Rich Dad. Who are some of your heroes? Were they real life mentors? Were they speakers or authors? Were they peers who were just a few years ahead of you? And how important were they to what you've accomplished so far in your freelance business?
Yeah, so one of my most important mentors is the professor who was the advisor on my master's thesis, and he passed away several years ago and was just such an amazing friend and supporter of my research. My work in the academic world has been very controversial, I guess, in the traditional academic department sense. And he was always a champion of me. And the first time that we ever met, I was in my teaching assistant office at 7 a.m. and he walked by, and he was the only other person in the building. And he's like, this is how I get my articles done. This is how I get my books done. He goes, when you work when no one else is working and you can't be disrupted, and it was just one of those lessons that I've carried forward with me a lot. So he was definitely a huge mentor to me. And then the first person that I ever met in the freelance world is someone who I now am a business partner with. We sell our courses about freelance writing and landing freelance gigs together, is Yawanda Black. And I bought everything she published back when I got started in 2012. She was the go-to authority for me, had 15 years of freelance experience, and always spoke in a very real, relatable way. And it made me feel like it was possible. And she spent half her year in Atlanta, half the year in Jamaica. And I was like, wow, that's amazing, like to have a business that just kind of follows you everywhere. So we've remained connected and colleagues all these years. I wrote a chapter in her book, and it's just really cool the way that that sort of relationship has evolved. But those are probably the two people who have influenced me the most in business.
So if you don't mind my asking, what was your research paper about that, your thesis that was controversial?
Yeah, so my master's thesis was all about mail order brides. We actually had to restrict it from being downloaded after it was published because a number of men who use these services were downloading it and trying to track me down and show up at events where I was giving speeches about the talk. And it was completely crazy when it happened. I was like 24, so I wasn't really expecting that. So we actually had the dean of the Graduate School of Virginia Tech blocked access to my thesis for 3 years just for my own privacy. And then it kind of came up for renewal, and I said, let's just let it out. Like, let's let it be there. I feel good enough now. And I'm actually glad that happened because a professor at the University of California emailed me and asked for permission to use it as a teaching tool in his classroom. And I was like, there's the kind of purposes that I were hoping were going to come from my master's thesis, not creepy people. So,
if you want a interesting connection there, my aunt, who's been my aunt for 30 plus years now, is a mail order bride from the Philippines.
Wow, amazing.
And my uncle and her have been married for longer than I've been alive, and they've got 4 kids who are a couple of years younger than myself.
Amazing.
And she still has all of her family and friends in the Philippines and goes back and visits every once in a while. But yeah, my aunt for my whole life is mail order bride from the Philippines.
See, you never know. And it's like, for some people that really works and it's completely safe and great relationships come from it. And sometimes it doesn't work. And it's just an interesting phenomenon to me that doesn't get a lot of like coverage in national. I mean, since of course I published that, you have shows like 90 Day Fiance that are kind of putting the reality TV spin on that whole thing. But that's definitely very interesting. It's a small world.
Yeah. Yeah, it is a small world, and I didn't realize it was I didn't realize it was a thing, and I didn't understand it as a child until I grew up, and I was like, oh, like who knew, right? But life is what it is, I guess.
Yeah.
Okay, so last question on the show is your guiding principles, right? So I say, let's bring it home for our listeners. What are the top 1 or 2 principles or actions that you use regularly today that contribute to the success and influence you enjoy, and maybe something that you wish you had known when you got started?
So I think one of the most important principles for me is to always be willing to dream a little bit bigger and to kind of desensitize myself to rejection a little bit. When I've stepped out of my comfort zone to try new and different things, it's always terrifying. So I think that's something that I wish I could go back and tell myself if I was starting all over again. Like, you're never going to feel like this is comfortable to launch a business, to speak on the TEDx stage, to get a book agent and have that book being pitched to publishers and have some people interested and some people flat out say no. But it's almost always worth it, because if I hadn't been willing to step out and be rejected, I wouldn't have had 2 TEDx talks and I wouldn't have a book that's coming out in 5 weeks with my name on the cover. So it's like, don't be afraid to put yourself out there. Like, the worst that someone will say is no. And if you really want it, you'll find a way to get there or get to a similar goal if your path changes.
Yeah, that's awesome. So random other connection. My couple of years ago now, it was 2012, I helped Temecula, California, which is where my hometown, or next to my hometown anyways, build their first TEDx, right? So we built the website and built all the things. So I actually got to put together, like on the, I don't know what you call it, the team that puts the TEDx together. Yeah. I actually got to do that. So I got to put together a whole TEDx thing. I still do it today, right? So they use some of the stuff that we put together that first time around. But yeah, it's, getting out there and realizing that you're gonna get rejected a lot,
Yeah.
and that's part of the process.
Hmm.
And one of my things now, I strive for rejection,
Hmm.
which is an interesting
Yeah.
thing to think about, but I want to get to know as quick as possible,
Yeah.
right? So yeah, I set my marketing and my things up, everything to drive towards getting rejected quick, right?
Yeah.
Because if I get rejected fast, then you can move forward, right, and go through other
Hmm.
things, and you realize that rejection is just part of the process. So if
Yeah.
you build it into your stuff and understand how important it is, that's how you get your yeses.
And you also realize how subjective so many things are. You can literally pitch the same idea to 50 different people and have equal parts say it's awful and terrible, and have other people be like, this is amazing. You absolutely need to be a part of my world for doing this. So it's about numbers too, right? Like you can't just like do something once and be like, oh, well, someone said no, that didn't work out. I guess it's not meant to be, right? Like think about the bigger picture, you know? I actually got rejected from over 90 TEDx events before I received invitations to speak at 5. So it took, and at number 91, the guy who was helping me apply for these, I was like, all right. I was like, this is enough. Like I've had enough rejection. He's like, no, it's just around the corner. He's like, I feel it. It's coming. And sure enough, it was coming. But I like the same thing. Let's get to know as quick as possible so I can move on mentally and kind of close this loop. I think the worst thing is ambiguity, when you're like wondering, is this going to work or not? Did I do something wrong? It's much easier to just get a flat no and keep going.
Yeah, I'll push people for that too. I was like, honestly, no is not a bad thing. You don't have to feel
No.
bad about telling me no. And I'll like, when I get on client calls, that's one of the first things I'll tell people, as I'll be like, look, the goal of this call is to get you to tell me no, right? And if we get to the end of the call and you still want to say yes, then we're meant to work together,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
Um, so because I don't want you to feel like you're going to hurt my feelings if we say no. Like I expect this call to not go to a yes.
Yeah.
And anyways, because at least at this point in my business, I have to really want to work with you to say yes.
Yeah. Yeah. Absolutely.
so so anyways, it's a cool place to be at. So anyways, the that pretty much finishes up the interview. I do one last thing that I do with everyone. It's called the Heroes Challenge. Heroes Challenge is really simple, and it's basically this: do you have someone in your network who you think has a really cool story for the entrepreneurial journey that you think should come on the show? Who are they, and why do you think they should come on the show?
Yes. I'm trying to think of like who is the most like relevant person here, but I am thinking specifically of a freelancing colleague of mine named Gina Horkey. She runs the Horkey Handbook, and she trains people how to be virtual assistants and help people to hire their first virtual assistant. And she has a free service that she'll basically allow you to put what you're looking for in a VA, and then she distributes it to all of the VAs she's trained. It's like a perfect seamless thing, and then you get amazing
That's
thoughtful
cool.
pitches. And she's had a really cool journey for how she got to where she is. She used to be my business coach, and she's just super inspirational. So let me know if you want those details, because I can connect you.
Yeah, absolutely. We'll reach out afterwards and get those connected. So thank you so much for coming on the show and being a part of this, Laura. It's been absolute pleasure talking to you. Before we go, what I want to do is find out, where can people find you if they're looking to either hire you for anything, or look for any of your courses, something like that. And then the second part of that is, who are the type of people who should reach out?
Absolutely. Great question. So my website is betterbizacademy.com. We publish lots of great free content there, including my newly rebooted Advanced Freelancing podcast, which is coming back very shortly. I hang out the most on LinkedIn, so you can search for me under Laura Pennington or Laura Briggs. And the type of people that I help most often are people who are struggling with some aspect of their service-based business. Maybe they're fully booked, but they're feeling exhausted. They're not fully booked and they don't know how to get there. And I really work with those kinds of freelancers one-on-one to develop strategies to grow their business in the right way that works for them, whatever that looks like.
Awesome. That sounds wonderful. So sounds like the best place to reach out to you would be on LinkedIn, Laura Pennington or Laura Briggs, or you can also check out, you said betterbizacademy.com?
.com. Yes. Mm-hmm.
Yeah. So anyways, if you are listening to this and you feel like you want to help get your service business past some sort of mental or physical block that you have going on, definitely take the time to reach out to Laura. Obviously, if you've been listening this long, you can tell she knows what she's doing. Take the time to reach out to her. And Laura, thank you so much for coming on. I really enjoyed having you on the show.
Thank you.